Hey everybody, I'm Oakley at Oakley Does Everything, and today with me is my guest.
Hi, I'm Denise at Skeleton Key Cosplay.
Awesome. Hi. We did it. We successfully got on without taking forever to make it happen.
Yeah, for real.
All right. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Those look amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is great. This is all gonna work out.
We're gonna make it, I swear, one of these
Yeah.
times. Well, that's cool. How's your day been so far?
It's been really good. I had like morning tea with a friend. Like we were just outside and we went with a walk. Uh, we went with Elijah on a walk
Nice.
and just chatted.
Yeah, good. That's nice.
Yeah.
It's always nice to still be able to be social in some capacity, and that's kind of like I don't know if I
Yeah.
said this before, but this kind of why I wanted to do this series so much is
Mm.
just like I'm a social person, but I get no opportunity to hang out with people anymore. So this helps with that. So I enjoy that a lot.
Yeah, it's so great.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What a perfect background for you. I like
I
that's
make
so perfect.
costumes.
I know. It's like it's like what? Yeah, no, it's great. Like I love how much thought you went into putting into that. Like I how hard is it to get your costumes onto the forums?
Um, so I just put these on super quick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it can take a decent amount of time um to pin everything and make it look perfect, but I didn't make everything look perfect, so I did this.
You'll you fooled me because it looks really good.
Thanks. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, so okay, here we go. On this, it's hilarious because my dress form is a little bit bigger,
Yeah.
so I can't get it all buttoned all the way, but like
Little
I,
your dress form's dressing a little risque today.
yeah, she's showing off a little corset there.
Yeah, that's
But it's
awesome.
okay because like it's hidden by this ruffle, so I was like, all
There
right,
you
it's
go.
fine. The thing with this dress form is it's like it's the size that it is, and I didn't buy one smaller because like I can squish down in the corset, but the dress
Yeah,
form only squishes down so much. So
human flesh has give. The corset, not so much.
yeah.
That's funny. And that's like a duchess or something like that, or what is that?
Yeah, it's a reproduction of the film, well, one of the costumes that Keira Knightley wears in the film The Duchess. And
Oh,
so she is a real historical figure, Duchess Georgiana of Devonshire. Um, and I started this costume, I think, I don't know, 10 years ago. I was in undergrad and I fell in love with the costume when I was watching the film, and I used it as my draping project. So it was a it was a final project of an independent study class that I took.
I
And
see.
so yeah.
Like the detail on that is incredible, and just kind
Thank
of
you.
like it's crazy. And I haven't seen it in person, but from the pictures I have seen, it seems very timely or time appropriate or accurate. What's the word I'm looking for?
Historically
Historically,
accurate?
yeah,
Yeah.
historically accurate. Good. I said it at the same time, so
Yeah. You got it.
I got it. I got there eventually. So what's the time period for that?
18th century. And I I love historical costuming, but I'm not the type of historical costumer that knows the exact date of when something was made. I am willing to make um, choices in terms of sewing that may not have been done at the time, just in terms of wearing it as a costume piece. To the best of my knowledge, I made this as accurate as I could. Um, but I don't know enough about the period to know for a fact that it is absolutely made perfectly to how it would have been made in the time period. So
Yeah. No,
I'm a little more relaxed in my approach with historical costuming.
yeah, and I would say with like the certain things that you're doing, it doesn't necessarily have to be, historically accurate or like, down to the T or whatnot, and that's kind of like an entirely different profession in
Yeah.
one regard, right? And
Yes.
so yeah, because you know the stuff you're doing is, I guess, more reproduction as opposed to historically accurate. In a way, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, right?
It depends on the approach. So I have a theatrical background in costuming, and so our concerns are different than necessarily being absolutely historically accurate because there's the performance aspect of wearing the costume. So it's not just something that's made to represent to a T what would be worn at the time. Um, so you have to take into consideration what movements are the actors doing. Do they need to do a cartwheel in this? If so, you're going to approach it much differently. And there's also I did a production of A Doll's House when I was in undergrad, and I was head of wardrobe, and they were in full Victorian costuming, and the main actress who plays Nora, we had a 30-second quick change. So she had to change from one complete Victorian outfit to another in 30 seconds. So you have to approach that differently than what necessarily would have been made at the time.
Right.
Because
A full body zipper in the back. Just
yeah, yeah, you hide zippers and snaps and, buttons and things like that to make the performance what it needs to be. There are other groups of people who do historical costuming, like the SEA and historical reenactors, who are more concerned about the historical side of it and tapping into the mindset of the people of the era, but they have more time to do that, and they're wearing, one outfit for a whole day rather than having to do 5 outfit changes for a theater performance. So
right. That's pretty
yeah,
cool. Now, where did Skeleton Key Cosplay come from?
that's a really good question. So before I got married, I knew I wanted to get married, and I always felt very strongly that I would change my name if I did get married. And so I wanted to find a name to represent sort of my business, my cosplay, I don't know, adventures, while still honoring my maiden name. Um, so my maiden name is Dietrich, which is German for skeleton key. And so it just seemed like a perfect fit. And I like how it sounds, Skeleton Key Cosplay. Um, and it still honors my maiden name while having a new name.
That's pretty intense. I actually like that. I wasn't expecting that to be the background of your name or the from the for your cosplay name or your business name, and Skeleton Key is, for a business name, is just kind of really good in general because it just kind of says I can do everything. It's like without actually having to put in your name that you do everything like me. so,
It
so,
makes me think of the fact that a skeleton key unlocks every door. So yeah, it's like I'm unlocking all these different doors of costuming.
yeah, no, that's a really really good name for it. So I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
jump in and do some rapid fire questions if you're ready for it.
Okay, here we go. I've been prepping for this.
All right. Some of these, so we'll try and do them quick, and if there are some that you want to like stop and unpack a little bit, we can.
Okay.
but we'll just kind of move through them a little bit. All right. Uh,
Okay.
DC or Marvel?
Ooh, Marvel.
Okay. Dull needle or dull fabric cutters?
Oh God. Oh God. I guess I. Oh no, I don't
If you could
know.
only use one, which one would you pick?
You've chosen really well. I don't. Dull shears. Dull
Yeah.
shears.
Yeah, I think I would go with the dull cutters as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
like with sewing, you kind of have to have your good needle, right?
Yeah. Well, you need both, but that's a tough one.
Yeah. Let's see. Favorite lightsaber color?
Ooh, oh man, that is such a good question. I I really like the color that I have. It's a nice clear blue. It's almost turquoise.
Nice.
I just love that color.
Good. Favorite Game of Thrones character?
Ooh, it's Arya Stark every
Nice.
time.
Yeah, that's a good one. Let's see. Favorite Game of Thrones house?
House Stark. I
There you
mean,
go. Yeah.
I I just love the Northerners. They make me feel like they're from Michigan, and I'm from Michigan. So
Are you? Okay. That's
yeah,
crazy. So sorry. I'm originally from Iowa, so Michigan and Iowa are both Midwestern states, but they're not
yeah.
actually that close together. It
Nope,
from where I live to Detroit, let's say, is like an 11-hour drive. Yeah,
that's
and
crazy.
because I've been to Detroit and I loved it. I went there for a car cruise,
Cool.
which yeah, it's called the Woodward Car Cruise, and it
Okay,
was a huge event. Yeah, it was cool. Anyways,
that's
but yeah,
awesome.
so yeah, it was a lot of fun. All right, favorite Star Wars trilogy?
Ooh, that is a good question. I like all of them for different reasons. And yes, I do like episodes 1 through 3. They're super cheesy, but I like having them in the background.
Yeah.
Um I I guess the originals.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I I
they're good.
myself I myself actually I think my favorite are the prequels.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, I think it's in chronological order for me. So the
Okay.
prequels are my favorite, then the originals are my second favorite, and then the newest
Oh.
trilogy are probably my least favorite. Um,
Oh, okay, interesting.
yeah, so
I love
uh,
my girl Ray, so
yeah, I
I'm
know.
a big fan of
Yeah.
the newer ones, but
So would your order be original, sequel, and then prequel?
I feel like they're neck and neck.
Oh yeah,
The prequel, I would say, takes the last slot of whichever order it is.
yeah, cool. That's fair.
I like them still because I want everything that is in Padme's closet.
Yeah, as I'm
Everything.
sure a lot of people do.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We'll come back and unpack that a little bit more. So I think I know the answer to this, but we'll ask it anyways. But between Padme, Leia, and Rey, which is your favorite?
Again, I love all of them and for different reasons. I think I think it's Ray.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah.
It was between Rey and Padme. I wasn't quite sure. I figured you have some mad respect for Leia, but wasn't quite on the same level as Rey and Padme. So
I love me some Space Mom, and I am considering making her white outfit because I've made Ray's white outfit and Padme's white outfit, so I gotta,
there you go.
finish
Yeah,
the trilogy with that.
that's right. Okay. Let's see. This one, I don't know how much you enter, but would you rather only use new virtual reality gaming or prefer old arcade gaming?
Old arcade gaming.
Yeah.
That's the only gaming that I know
All right.
and that
If
I'm
you
good
could,
at. You can button mash.
yeah, pretty much.
My brother
All right.
hated me.
Yeah, I bet. Oh, it's so annoying. It's like, stop it.
Yeah.
All right.
And then I would get these really amazing combinations, and he was like, "How did you do that?"
It's like, I don't know. I just push buttons. Yeah. All
Funny.
right. If you could only ever again cosplay as Elsa or Anna, who would you choose?
Okay, so based off of the first movie, I would have said Elsa, but based off of the second movie, I think I would say Anna.
Oh, okay, very good. Your
Yeah.
your your Anna cosplay is spot on, so that's
Oh,
really awesome.
thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, if you had the choice between saving Princess Peach or saving Princess Zelda, who would you save?
I think Princess Peach only because I haven't played Zelda.
That's okay.
Even
My
though
so
a friend gifted it to me and I intended to play and I just didn't.
Yeah, no, like I had one of the original Game Boy Zelda games, and I don't remember which one it was, but I only
Yeah.
got like 30 minutes into the game before I couldn't figure out what I actually needed to do, so I just stopped playing it. So,
That is exactly the scenario that happened to me because it's the Game Boy version and I like saved her from the dungeon and I was like, sweet, now what? And then I
yeah.
couldn't figure it out.
I don't know if I ever got that far. I like it was stupid. I couldn't figure out what it was. So I wasn't a very proficient Game Boy player when I was a kid. All right.
I was when I was a kid, but not as an adult apparently.
I'm sure if I went back as an adult and tried to figure it out, I'd be much better off. But yeah, I was not video game literate as a child. All right, where do your allegiance lie? PlayStation, Xbox, or Nintendo?
Oh. Yeah, so this is gonna go back to the original playing of video games, so it would be Nintendo.
Yeah, the button mashing Nintendo. Yep.
Yeah.
All
My
right,
brother's so mad at me.
that's okay. I'm sure he'll forgive you someday.
Yeah.
All right, if you had to prefer the Star Wars live action content or the animated shows, which one would you prefer?
I think I like the live action.
I actually prefer the animated series.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Which one have you
Like
seen or which ones?
so I have seen all of the Clone Wars and all of Star Wars Rebels,
Mhm.
and I think they're amazing. I think they can expand more of the story within the series and within each season and more
Right.
character development. They just it
Yeah.
just they just put a lot more time into those aspects that I really enjoy, that the movies don't have the time for. And and there are other issues that I kind of have with the live action stuff, but I've grown to love the animated stuff, and it's really good in my opinion. So yeah,
That's what
that's
I like about the Clone Wars because I like Padme's character so much. And in the films, it's more like I like the idea of her, but then in the Clone Wars, you get to see more of her positive characteristics. And so I just
right.
really enjoy seeing her more.
Yeah, and her being a strong female character and actually being able to see that as opposed to, the helpless,
Yeah,
wife. And even though like in the first episode one, she's obviously a very powerful character, but I feel like the second and the third they kind of downplay her character a lot, and
I do too.
she's kind of the
A
uh,
damsel in distress, sort of.
that's yep, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And the animated series really expands on her and shows what kind of badass she is. So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. All right, let's see. Let's do one more. Which would you do kind of thing? What would be your starter Pokemon? Which one would you choose?
Oh, yeah. So, which one did we choose this past time around? I started playing Pokemon Go with my husband, and it's so funny. He never played Pokemon growing up because he's Russian, and so a lot of those like '90s kids type cultural things he just didn't really participate in.
I gotcha.
Um, and I forgot which one we chose. I think we chose Bulbasaur, but I usually like picking, I think, Charmander because then you get a Charizard eventually.
Who doesn't
Um,
love a Charizard, right?
he's amazing. And I
Yeah.
think when I was younger, I had the Game Boy version where you could get Pikachu as your starter. So you had a
Pokemon Yellow.
fourth option. Yeah.
Yeah.
So of course I chose Pikachu. I mean, come on.
Well, I think in the Yellow series you can only pick Pikachu.
Oh, well, I would have chosen him anyways.
But I think in the Game Boy Yellow version they do, what is it? Oh, you actually get all three of the starter Pokemon throughout the game. Like characters give them to
Okay.
you in some capacity. So that's a nice thing about Yellow is you can collect all three of the primary starters and get Pikachu. So
It's pretty amazing.
yeah. So I'm a Charmander guy, but at the same time, I've always dreamed of making an all turtle team. um and so that would be like not just from like the original first two generations, like throughout all of them there's all kinds of different turtle Pokemons with like three evolutions that I've always been like, oh, I want all of these. I kind of have a thing
Yeah.
for turtles. I just like turtles. Yeah, but Squirtle's not even my go-to. It's probably Charmander, Bulbasaur, and then, or excuse me, Charmander, Squirtle, and then Bulbasaur in that order
Okay.
is. But I always try to make a point to get all three of them somehow in the game. So
Of course, yeah. You got to catch them all.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was actually contemplating one of the questions maybe for another person, but it was like, do you catch them all or do you become the very best? Like which one?
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm a guy
Well,
to
the
catch
song
them all.
tells us we got to do both.
That's right. That's right. All right. Okay, well, let's learn a little bit more about you and kind of your history in cosplay and sewing and stuff like that. So, what was your very first cosplay, or what kind of got you into being a seamstress and going this route?
Yeah, so there are different answers for each of those questions. I studied theater in undergrad, and well, theater costuming in undergrad, and so that's what got me into sewing and making costumes and being interested in it. Um, my first cosplay I didn't do until I think it was 2 years after I graduated undergrad. So I was in between grad school and undergrad, and sorry. So I went to grad or undergrad. After that, I lived in Germany for a year, and then I lived home for a year, and in that year I contemplated life and which path I was going to take, and I
Went
decided
backpacking across Europe, and
well, I did that when I was in Germany, right?
there you go.
But yeah, I was doing some soul searching and decided grad school was the way to go. And so, but that was the first year that I did my first traditional cosplay, because up until that point I had gone to Renaissance fairs and pirate festivals, which is similar to cosplay but just a little bit different. um, but my first cosplay that I did was Chun-Li. And that was sort of an inside joke because I had been studying Taekwondo for I think it was a year at this point. Oh, there's a child.
No, that's fine.
Have fun. They're gonna go to the pool. That sounds really
Oh,
fun.
that does sound fun.
um, yeah, so this was when I was in Germany, and I was studying Taekwondo. And it was so funny because I was talking to a friend of mine about this point in your hip that you don't have to put all that much pressure on it, but you can pretty much knock a person over by just like tapping on that spot in the hip, because it's like your center of gravity and balance. And so I went to show him and I put my foot on his hip and I like just barely kicked him and he like flew into the wall. And so, we were both laughing. Like he didn't get hurt, but from that point on, he kept calling me Chun-Li.
Oh, that's
And so
funny.
I was like, oh, well, and my brother and I used to play Street Fighter, and I would always play Chun-Li because,
Yeah,
she's a
of course.
girl. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome. Because I saw the picture on your Instagram where you're doing the splits on some stage or whatnot, and I was like, oh, okay, like that's pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So those of you that are watching, don't mess with Denise. She means business. She can knock you over.
Yeah. Just by
Chun,
barely tapping your hip. I'm
yeah,
so sorry.
Chun-Li style. Back off. So that was your very first cosplay then?
That was my first one, yeah.
Gotcha. And what inspired you? I guess the other side of the question is what inspired you to get into being a seamstress? Is that the right word? Like a seamstress, or is there a different professional name for what you do?
So again, there are different ways to answer that. In the costume shop world, there are different job titles for each position or each stage of a costume's completion has a different title to it. But colloquially and societally, people I think are straying away from the term seamstress because it has connotations of gender with it. So I think a lot of people who are home sewists like the term sewist or tailor, although tailoring in the costume shop world has a different
And also,
connotation to it.
yeah, it also has a gender identification to it as well, right?
Yes, well, tailoring in the classic sense is making menswear.
Right.
So, but then you can also go to a tailor and get your clothing altered, and it doesn't
Right.
matter if it's male or female clothing. So it is a little bit confusing. So I have a master's degree in costume production, and you going through the grad program, you can find what your emphasis is in. So I enjoyed both aspects of draping and craft work. And so being a draper is a pattern maker. So what happens is a designer will work with a director, a costume designer will work with a director, and working with the director and the scenery, they'll come up with an aesthetic for a theatrical production. Once they've settled on a design, they usually provide some form of rendering or drawing of what the characters look like. And so what they do is the costume designer will hand the draper both the actor's measurements and, well, that's a shop manager. Anyways, sorry. We can go into a lot of detail here. But you get an actor's measurements and you get the costume rendering. And what a draper has to do is basically pattern out. You can either flat pattern or drape on a dress form. And you will do fittings and make sure that your pattern makes sense between a flat 2D image into a three-dimensional object. And from there, you'll have a first hand, a dyer, someone who will cut fabric, someone who will sew the fabric. And in the costuming world, if you're costume shop world, if you are just sewing the costume, you're called a stitcher. So for myself, being on my own, it's a little hard. I'm not exactly sure exactly what I want to be called. I like to tell people that I'm a costume engineer because I feel like it gets across all of the capacities of what I am doing with a costume. I feel like when I tell people I make costumes for a living or I sew costumes, they immediately have this idea in their head that it's not serious. I'm just making things for Halloween. My skill level is not what they're anticipating. And I usually will try to explain to them and show photos and then they get it, but just based off of conversation, there's a level of respect that I get if I say costume engineer versus if I just say I'm a sewist.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, and that's kind of the interesting thing too, is when you get into a different depth of what you kind of see yourself as and what you describe to other people and what you do. Because for myself and kind of how my, I guess, social media name portrays is I do a bit of everything. And but like that doesn't go to show that like I was I have my undergrad degree in music education, so I'm a music, in one professional capacity, I'm a music teacher, and in my current state, I'm a stay-at-home dad. And so, but if I say I'm a stay-at-home dad, then like there that just kind of gets rid of all the other aspects of what I do. And then in the evening, when my wife and baby go to bed, I'm down in my basement workshop working on all kinds of projects like guitars and props and furniture and stuff like that. And so and in that respect, it's like I'm kind of a YouTuber, like a small time YouTuber, and I do all kinds of things. And so when people are like, what do you do? And I'm just like, oh, a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
you know and it's so hard to kind of wrap your head around how you identify yourself as, and like what you want to call yourself and how people recognize or identify their perspective of what you do towards that. Because yeah, if you say I'm a costume designer, it's the first thing they might jump to is, oh, the Halloween store that opens up in September and has a huge sale on November 1st. It's like
Yep.
no, it's definitely not what you do, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm making couture items. I'm not making cheap um just reproductions and just slamming them out. I'm, making individual pieces.
Right. And so how do you go about let's talk a little bit of business aspect, if that's okay with you. How do
Mhm.
you how do people approach you for wanting to hire you to do something? I know you have an Etsy shop that seems to be pretty successful, but how do you gauge the costs that you put into your stuff, and how do people end up, paying for it in the end? And not specifically asking you is like how much do you charge people, but like how do you gauge your value and the time that you put into these things? And because I know the other night when we were talking, you were working on an Azula costume from the last Airbender series, and which looks like it might be back there. Oh yeah, yeah. So that's incredible, and and so like is on your Etsy shop. It's like I have these things, and that's what it costs. But for these one-off items, you know, what's your process for that stuff?
Yeah, it's really difficult, and you're not the first person to ask me that question. Um, there are several factors to take into consideration. Um, I'll just give the basis of what I typically do. So I have Etsy. Um, I have a Facebook page and an Instagram page. And there's good old fashioned word of mouth. So that is how people have found me. Um, it's great because I feel like you just need to make that one big sale of a large costume, and you can give business cards to that person and ask, to hand them out if people, if they're walking around on the con floor and if someone says, hey, this is a really cool costume, where did you get it? And then they can say, well, I got
Yeah,
it from here. And I've, reached out that way, and over time you'll see that, you'll reach more people from word of mouth than just from Etsy. The problem with Etsy now is, um, they're charging more for advertising, so makers like myself are getting hidden by their algorithms. So it's a little frustrating because you have to pay extra in order to get their lovely advertising, even though you were doing better without it before. um, but I get it. It's a company. They have to make money.
And I've heard similar complaints about Etsy and how it's kind of, for the people that are doing the smaller businesses per se, they're they're not getting as much exposure through the website as before, because now there's kind of like a hierarchy, a pay to play, as you will, system
Yep.
with it. And now it kind of seems like Etsy is kind of in a way turning into eBay, where some people will post stuff that they didn't make, and it's just products that they have from somebody.
Yep.
And they didn't even have, the only part they had in having it is it being in their house to ship off their warehouse, and not necessarily the crafter per se. And so yeah, I've heard similar complaints and frustrations about Etsy in its current state. So yeah, but yeah, please continue.
But it's, for me, it's still a great advertising site. I still will find potential customers there. Um, so if it is something that I've made in the past, generally I have a, set price on the item. Um, Sometimes what will happen is if I've made it once, I'll have a better understanding of what it takes to make it and make it well. And so the second one may end up being more money, but that's reflecting of more cost of materials and more time spent to make it look even better. Um, so I factor in time and cost spent on materials. Um, I have a professor from grad school who would also say, um, first keep track of your hours. Anytime we did a project in grad school, we had to clock our hours and we would present that at the end. We would say, it took me this long to make it and it costs this much in materials. So we already got into the habit of being aware of how long something took us to make and how much money it would cost. She also would say to do your cost estimate of materials, but then add 10% to that, because I don't know about you, but anytime I work on a project, I think, oh, well, I bought all these things. I don't need to buy anything else. And then I'll start working on it and realize, oh, I actually do need to buy this other thing. So you already preempt that cost being there so that you're not losing money on materials. Um, and in terms of, asking for what you're worth, it's so hard. I would say that is the hardest part of asking for money, because it's just really hard putting worth to your work. I value so much what I do and I appreciate it so much. But then when you have to put a dollar value on that, it is terrifying. And I messaged a friend of mine from my grad program. She graduated the year before me, but we text each other all the time because she will also do commission work. And she does more of the theatrical work and ballet, things like that, but she still will have to make bids for the work that she's doing. And so we'll message each other and we'll say, hey, do you think I should charge this much for this item? And we'll ask each other a few clarifying questions of, well, does it have to do this? What's involved? And usually what we end up telling each other is that we need to charge more.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And one example is I just finished making a guitar for a relative to give to their husband for his birthday, and I I was like, I gave you the super duper family discount, because at the very beginning of most of the time when anybody reaches out to me for if they want me to make them something, the first thing I ask is, what's your budget? Because then I can tell them that's not going to work, or I can make that work. Because the thing is we as makers, and maybe smaller makers that haven't quite gotten to a realm where like we can turn away work, is there is an aspect of, I charge what I'm worth, not what your budget is. And there is that, as smaller makers, then I might be in a different boat than you are, because your business seems to be at a higher level than what I currently do my stuff with. But you know, when I would do music lessons, I would charge $25 for a half-hour lesson, and a lot of people think that's very reasonable. And if I put that in the context, that's about $50 an hour. Well, if I charge somebody $50 an hour to make them a prop or something, and I put 20 hours into that prop, that's a lot of money. And that's not even counting the cost of materials. And it's like, in one perspective, it's like, I want to do this to kind of make some money, but at the same time, I don't want to scare away people from doing this. And so it's this weird give and take when you're starting out with whatever your business is. If you're making products for somebody, and if people want to haggle you, like, you know, that's a choice that you have to make if you're willing to accept, you know, negotiations or what their budget is. But, you know, somebody asked me today if I can make like a prop mask for them, and I said, well, what's your budget? And they gave me a number, and I'm like, well, if I did it for, you know, I'm guessing material is going to be about this much, I'd put about 10 hours into it. And, you know, like, let's say I charged $10 to $15 an hour, you know, which is, it's not a ton of money per hour in that perspective. But in that regard, you still make something, because somebody like me, I'm doing these projects mostly for the fun of it. And so if I can make something, get content for it, and then get a little bit of money from it, you know, I'm kind of willing to make that sacrifice. But as somebody who is making products for people on the regular business as their business model, then you know, you're going to need to consider charging more, and charging, like, you know, your professional level of what you put into it, you know, like whether that's $20 an hour, whether it's $30 an hour. And creating estimates for people is hard, because, you know, like you said, you figure out what you think for material, and there is always the situation where it's like, oh, I forgot to include that, so, and now I got to pay for it out of my own pocket until the project's done. And so
I'm
that
telling
is,
you, man, that 10%, it's when I told that again to Candy, my friend that I was talking about earlier, she had forgotten that little detail, and she messaged me, you know, within the past year, and she just said, I'm so glad you reminded me of that, because there's always something.
always something. Yeah, when I was making this guitar that I sent off, I forgot to include clear coat, you know, the finish for it. And I'm like, oh, okay, like, you know, I'll pay for it now, but I guess I'll get, you know, I won't be out of pocket later.
You know, within the past year, I've also figured out different scales of pricing. So I let people know up front, we can go all out and go couture and go, you know, hand sewing, finishing, and really nice fabrics. That will cost you this. If that is out of your budget, and if this costume doesn't mean, you know, that much to you, then we can talk about, you know, sacrifices in quality, you know, so we'll use polyester fabrics, or I'll do a machine hem instead of hand sewing the hem. That will cost you this, you know. So the customer does have some ability to voice what they do care about, because some people just want the costume and they don't really care about all of the fancy details. I think most people really enjoy details, but when you start asking those deeper questions of, you know, putting the dollar amount on it, they're able to discern what they're willing to sacrifice.
Right. So
So,
you provide options and then give different tier lists of, costs. And that way they have, yeah, absolutely. They have different choices when it comes to how much money they can put out, as well as still getting something appropriate for what they're wanting and
mhm,
you still getting business.
mhm,
Yeah, no, that's a great option to do. And when I tell people about guitars, or if they call me up asking if I can make guitars for them, I do a similar thing. It's like, well, if your budget's like $500, like I can do this. If your budget's like $2,500, we can do a custom bridge, a custom nut, like different, shiny bits on it, and different things like that, and or different pickups. And it's like pickups can be crazy expensive. You can buy pickups for electric guitars that go from $200 for a set to like $1,500 for a set, and it's crazy. And they're like, well, I want this pickup. I'm like, okay, do you know how much that pickup is? It's like, well,
let me
if
tell you.
yeah, it's like, I'll tell you how much it is, and you can tell me if you want it still. um
Yep.
yeah, because absolutely the time that goes into it is definitely what you have to consider when you're doing that. Transitioning over to materials and certain specifications, where do you get your fabric? Because I have so many projects myself that I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'd love to make that, and I want it to be as accurate as it can be, or what it might be. For example, I've been wanting to do a Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon cosplay for a couple of years now, and finding really like material that I think would be age appropriate or historically appropriate. You know, it's not always something you can just go online and find at Joann's or Michael's or Hobby Lobby or something like that. You kind of I How do you find your materials, and where do you go for that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's hard, because if you don't live in California or New York, you don't have a fashion district. So I'm in North Carolina, and the only thing we have now is Joann's. There used to be two other fabric stores that were a little bit of a drive away, but they've closed out, and Joann's seems to be the one that's going strong still. There is still one more local shop, that's maybe a half an hour drive from me, and they have really high-end silk, um, and cotton fabrics. All I think it's all natural fibers, and just it's so beautiful, and I love to go and just drool. The price is much more expensive. Um, so I honestly haven't purchased anything from them, which is a shame because I would like to shop local, but I have found that I'm able to find some of the higher end fabrics for not as high end of a price tag. Um, so for instance, if I want silk, I often end up going to dharmatrading.com, and they have just about any sort of silk fabric that you might want. Um, the caveat with that is you're probably going to end up having to dye the fabric, which is great. I don't mind doing the dyeing process, and I really
Because
enjoy it.
yeah, you did that with the costume to your left, correct?
Yeah. Oh, here we go.
Your other
this
left.
this camera is
Oh,
backwards,
I
so
see.
really
Gotcha.
confusing. Yeah. So all of this fabric started off as white before I got to it. Um,
All of it,
all
or
of it.
just the cape? Oh, really?
All of it. Yeah. I
Wow.
dyed
Okay.
the pants. I dyed this rope. I dyed this linen fabric, and this is a cotton print. It's a little hard to see the print,
You can see
but
it.
even that, I dyed that, and this was a different
Wow.
color.
And is
Um,
that all the same kind of fabric, or are they different fabrics that you dyed? Okay.
Yeah, this is a raw silk. This is, I forgot what type of silk, but it's another silk. It's got slubs in it. It isn't a dupioni, but I think it's similar to a raw silk. And then this is silk crepe.
Gotcha. Yeah, I on one of your Instagram posts, I saw where you're standing up on the counter, dipping that cape in, just about halfway or so, just to uh,
Yeah.
so it gets the fade away effect to it. That's really cool. Like I knew that you
Yeah,
dyed the cape, but I didn't know that you dyed everything on that. That's pretty amazing.
I did. Yeah. So I really love it. And
What
and
what
you
do you
can.
what do you use to dye? Like what are the what's the product that you use? Like, I'm sure you're not just using food coloring, are you? Or
No, I didn't for this one, anyways. You can use food coloring. I think that would dye protein-based fibers. I I haven't really tested it all that much. So like people who use like Kool-Aid, that's a similar thing, like to dye their hair. Anyways, sorry, I could go. I'm like a dye nerd. I love it. I would say your best bet is to go to Dharma Trading. They have so many tutorials and write-ups of what types of dyes to use for which fiber. Since they sell silk, they sell more of the silk dyes, and it depends on what you want to do with it. Um, because that's going to change what type of dye you use to get the end result that you're looking for.
gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
so I used a variety of different dyes to get this look. Um, you can also use RIT dye. RIT will dye silk. Um, and
Rit,
it,
what is RIT, or how do you spell that?
it's RIT.
Okay.
And that is, I would say, I think it's the most common dye that's available. They even have it at grocery stores.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's available at Joann's.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so I took a class on how to dye fabric, and in that class we have the sample book of different fibers, and we had to dye the samples in RIT dye. So then you had sort of a color wheel, and you could refer to that booklet when you were having to dye something. So, say I wanted to dye something scarlet red, I could look at that sample, look at the fiber that I'm looking to dye, and see what color that produces using scarlet red. And if I need to adjust it in any which way, you go from there. It's sort of
You
like painting, but
Yeah, so you have swatches based off of prior experiences that you've used, correct? Is that kind of the idea?
yes. Well,
And you keep
so
track of formulas and how many drops for whatever, and this is what the color ended up being. And go ahead.
I believe they sell this on Dharma's website, but you'll get a huge roll, and it looks like a thick ribbon, and there's a strip of different fibers in that one piece, and you can cut them up into sample sizes, and you can dye it in whatever dye material you have. And based off of whatever fiber you have, it will take dye differently. So you can see how it affects silk versus cotton.
I see.
Um, so because my teacher in grad school was teaching a class, she bought a huge roll of it because she would be using it over the years.
Yeah. Gotcha. That's really cool. There's so many different aspects because whenever I go shopping for fabrics or materials or anything like that, I go there and I'm just searching through whatever I think is accurate or close to what I want. And oftentimes I'm just kind of settling on, stuff that I find because, it's either not as fancy as you want, or it might be like more like what you do want is way more expensive per yard versus the, the blizzard fleece over there is, like $3 a yard, and so you go pick that up as opposed to, some other whatever. And so that's kind of like my struggle with finding fabrics and stuff like that, is just kind of, well, first off, you walk into a Joann's or a fabric store, and it can be a little overwhelming if you don't know what you're looking for, honestly. And
Yes.
and that, because you have so many options, and then you're trying to find solid colors because you don't want all the, Pikachu prints or the Lion King print, or all these different cartoons that are popular and trending at the moment. And so you got to find your way through all that, and then you may find the color that you want, but it's not the material you want. So it's cool to see that you found a material that works for what you want, and then you change the color for your needs, and so then you get exactly what you want, or at least something close to, with a material that works well for the project. So that's really cool. I didn't realize how much you dyed things, or can dye things. And even I believe, like, on those shoulder pieces of that same project, you said that they're painted on.
Yes. Um,
Which
so
blows my mind, because so many parts of that I've seen close-up pictures of on your Instagram, it looks like threaded things, but I suppose that's just the texture of the material that you
Mhm.
painted on. And yeah, that's like, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
And
I love painting costumes. It's that's a big reason why I chose. Well, I love Haku first off. I love Hannah Alexander second off, and it's just a blending of everything. That's my favorite.
yeah, and it's cool because I've thought about projects that I want to do that I'm like, oh, how would I do that? Like, I'd have to do like all this different kind of embroidery, and finding patterns, like, but that's just something that didn't cross my mind that I could do, is just paint it on and it's fine. Like, and it looks, just like an embroidered thing from a distance anyways,
I
and
did that
and
in
up
grad
close too.
school too. It was so funny. So we had a class called Period Pattern, and every 2 weeks we would have to turn in a half of a costume based on the period that we were studying that week. So we went from Greek costuming all the way up till 1950s. So it was 4 semesters of a class, um, but I I forgot. I think it was a Regency era costume where they did all this delicate embroidery on muslin fabrics. And I just took puffy t-shirt paint and like painted on the embroidery. And like you're only making a half of a costume for this class, so you don't have to worry as much about finishing the seams. Like the point of the class is learning how to pattern for that period. Um, so doing anything extra like that, it doesn't have to be super high tech. But people were floored in my grad program. They were like, "That's painted," and I just was like, it was the only way I could think of getting that on there really
Yeah,
quickly and cheaply.
right, absolutely. And again, it's just like things that you don't consider until you see a professional doing that. And yeah, no, that's pretty incredible. So let's see, what is,
In terms of fabric shopping as well, I
yeah.
I go pretty much anywhere online. I'll check out Etsy, eBay, Mood Fabrics, Fashion Fabric Direct, and I also ask a lot of other friends if I see something that they purchased for a character that I'm interested in. I'll ask them, "Hey, can you send me the link?"
Yeah, there you go. No, that's a good way to do it. Well, I was thinking about it. So what, we're talking about all the business aspects of all your sewing as a sewist, and what what does Denise do for fun? Like, a lot of people's hobbies are doing cosplay and stuff like that, and I'm sure to a certain extent you enjoy it. Obviously, if you should be doing something professionally that you enjoy. And but like, we were talking the other night about how, you know, people might say, it's like, oh, I bet you sew your own clothes. It's like, God, no, why would I do that? But, you know,
No.
you know, what do you like to do for fun? Or, you know, like what other things do you enjoy doing outside of your work as a sewist?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. That's a good question. Um, my husband and I both really like just spending time with friends. Like, first and foremost, like, we really just enjoy deep, good friendships with people, um, and just doing whatever, you know. Um, sometimes they have a birthday party, or sometimes they have a hobby or interest that we can go and watch them do that thing. So we really enjoy, having a community of friends where we can participate in that. But we also this year, um, we have my husband and I often do our hobbies together. It's interesting, which is lovely. I love that about us. We've been gardening a lot this summer, especially with not having a lot of outside resources available to us. Not meaning outdoors, but meaning like we can't just go to the library. We can't just go to a museum with Elijah. We tried to think of things that we could do that was outside the house, and gardening has been so rewarding and fun and difficult and expensive.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just really fun. Like, we dug up potatoes last month and then cooked them and ate them. It's like we grew potatoes, like, and we compost, and it just feels really cool. Um, and
So to talk about the gardening a little bit, before we moved back to Iowa, we lived on 8.5 acres, and so we had a really large garden. It was kind of like, uh, I think I measured it out. It was 50 feet wide and 80 feet long. And so, like, it was a pretty sizable garden. And I think that year, I actually just found the notebook that I kept track of. I would weigh them each time I picked the tomatoes. And I think I ended up picking like 125 pounds of tomatoes that summer. And I
wow.
like growing potatoes, like planting the seed potatoes and then just letting them be, and then halfway through you mound them, and then picking the potatoes at the end is just so rewarding. And because like there's so little effort that you have to do to put in.
No, it's so great.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and I love potatoes, so like that's fun too. But yeah, you're talking about how expensive it can be if you don't have any of the tools, I assume, to start gardening.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's an overhead that you don't have to worry about next year. So
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, and thankfully, so we live in a condo and we have neighbors, there's a unit of 4 that is in our unit. Um, and thankfully our neighbors have a lot of those supplies, so we can just text them and borrow items. And thankfully we've gotten in their good graces to be able to borrow items.
that's nice. Yeah,
It
that's cool.
is.
So you were saying about socializing and being able to hang out with friends. How has that been affected by the whole pandemic going on? Like, what kind of adaptations or changes have you guys had to do to still be able to do that or enjoy that?
Yeah, early on, I think we did what everyone else did and shut in and didn't go out and do anything. We only would go to the grocery store, and even then, we would just send one of us, and then we'd come home and disrobe and take a shower and put on clean clothing.
Yeah.
But in terms of socialization, over the past few months, we've met up with very small groups of people. Usually we're wearing masks. We're always outdoors. We've gone on some hikes. We've done some picnics. So that's why I say we're not always wearing masks, because it's hard to eat with a mask. But, we're sitting at distances from each other. And, I think our group of friends have been making wise choices. And it's helpful when you have a group that supports that. And um, you don't have to worry about potentially passing COVID to each other.
Right.
So
Yeah. And we were kind of the same way. We shelter in place, and even still, like if we go out grocery shopping, we'll come home, you know, disrobe and go shower and keep those clothes separate and wash them. And my wife works at a doctor's office. She's a nurse, and so she does that same routine every day when she gets home, and just making sure to keep the house clean and keeping out any potential, germ particles or whatever. And we still haven't quite gotten to the point where we're hanging out with other people outside of a very small circle. For example, we hang out with my sister-in-law and her boyfriend, and they're doing basically the same stuff that we're doing. He works from home, so he doesn't have to go out to work. She wears a mask and a face shield at her work, and wears a mask anytime they go out and stuff like that. So we know it's nice having your circle where you know what's going on, and you can stay safe that way, and still be able to have somebody to socialize outside of your immediate family. And same thing for my wife's parents. They stay at home and take care of that. And unfortunately, like my side of the family, they have lots of kids, so they got daycare and going to school and stuff like that. So, and my mom's a postal carrier, and so if you don't thank your postal carrier on a regular basis, you should, because they're important and necessary. So thank them and give them your appreciation, and not just because my mom is one of them, but just because in general they're important. And so she's out, caring to people all the time, and so we kind of, tend to not hang out with them very much, unfortunately, which is a bummer for me, because for the obvious reasons. But yeah, so like it's nice having a circle of friends, like you were just saying, that you can trust that they're being careful with those kinds of things, and making sure that everybody stays healthy as they can. So hopefully people are taking this as seriously as they should, because it's important. My wife is a public health, or she has a master's degree in public health from Johns Hopkins. So I hear about it all the time. So it's like, if I'm not doing something, I'll know. So
yeah, right?
yeah, absolutely. So, but yeah, no, that's really cool. So talking about family, I know that you like to do some cosplays with your husband and your son.
I do.
So
Yeah,
what?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what are some of the ones that you guys have done before?
Oh, well, yeah, so I was partway gonna answer that question. Earlier today, so I got a new camera and I was testing it out. And so I shoved the little Baby Yoda hat on my son, and he was my subject to photograph. He hates hats. He hates
Oh,
hats
does
so
he?
much. Yeah, so I try to cram it on and take 1,000 photos of him. But
Yeah,
he's so cute in it. He's so cute.
yeah.
So I've made him Baby Yoda. I've made him a Porg. But he doesn't fit in the costume anymore. They grow so fast in that first year that it's like,
Yeah,
um,
and real fast, like for people that are watching, Denise and I both have a baby that are roughly the same age. Denise's son is about 3 months older than my daughter, and I have plans for costumes or whatnot. But yeah, they grow so fast. Like
oh
I
gosh.
like 2 weeks ago, it's like, oh my gosh, like I could hold you like this, but now I'm holding you like this, and it's just
And there are limbs
crazy.
everywhere.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
ridiculous. But yeah, go
it's
on.
crazy. Um, up as Rey, I had to make my husband Kylo. He
That's a
he
badass
doesn't really
costume.
care. I love it.
Yeah.
It's so fun watching him dress up. He really doesn't connect with characters necessarily in the same way that I do. So I'm kind of lucky in that way, because he's willing to just dress up in whatever I put him in.
Yeah. That's nice.
So I'm very thankful for that. Um, my favorite thing that I've made for him was the vest for Matt the radar technician.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think I saw that one. Yeah.
Yeah, so he dresses up as Kylo, but then when that skit came out, we were just like, oh, we have to make this happen. And it was so fun because we went to Dragon Con and we found a group of them. And so we tagged along in the group, and they were handing out cards to people that you opened up and it says, oh, sorry, I killed your son. And just like in the skit, and just watching him, and he is so good at improv, and he is a very funny person that I'm just not good at these kinds of things. So me watching him just open up in this way was just, oh, it was a treat. It was so enjoyable.
That's
Um,
hilarious.
so we've gravitated toward a lot of the Star Wars characters together as a family. It's really easy to do. There's just so many characters to choose from. Um, yeah, in terms of planning in the future, I don't know what I'm gonna make Dimitri next, but I have like 5 different costumes I'm making Elijah.
Yeah, of course.
So
And it's easy to do it for babies. It might not have to necessarily be like as specific as adult cosplays or whatever. You can do like onesies or pouches or stuff like that to put them
yeah,
in, and it makes it so
and he's
easy.
just cute.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's
Yeah,
all
no,
that matters.
yeah, absolutely. It's crazy how every once in a while you think about how like people's babies, and you're like, oh, I love my baby. I think she's so cute. And then like sometimes you have the perspective of like, oh, it's not a very cute baby, and, kind of thing. And like I feel you and I are in the very lucky group where we think our babies are cute and they actually are cute. And so,
I've
um,
had people say that. They're like, I'm not just saying that to be nice. Your baby is really cute. And I'm like, I
yeah,
mean, I'm super biased, but I really think he's cute.
yeah, I'll tend to agree with you. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like it's always the funny part of having a baby. It's when they first come out, they're not very cute, but you love them the same.
Just wrinkly little raisin people.
Yeah, with cone heads and yeah.
Yep. Yep.
uh, but they
They grow
eventually
into it.
they grow into their cuteness. Yeah, that's exactly what I was
Yep.
about to say. So no, that's wonderful. So, well, I think we're gonna wrap this up. I think I see my baby squirming on the monitor, so I think I do need to get going. Denise,
Cool.
where can people find you on social media?
So on Instagram, it's skeleton.key.cosplay. And on Facebook, it's Skeleton Key Cosplay. And I have my Etsy link on, I think both on Facebook and Instagram. But it's under Arm Bandits. That was before I had a better name in line, and they won't let me change it. So
Oh,
that's what I got.
bummer. Okay, cool.
I know.
Oh, okay, cool. So I'll make sure to have links of those for all those in the description, as well as a little box below this, so everybody can see where that is and how it is properly spelled. But yeah, anybody that's watching this, please go check out her all of her social media pages. Check out her Etsy store, see what she has up for sale, and if any of Denise's fans are watching this video, just to get a little bit more insight on her, I would love it if you guys subscribed to my channel as well and checked out my Instagram page. I do some sewing stuff, so there is a little bit of crossover and prop making. So yeah, so please check out my stuff. It's at Oakley Does Everything. At Oakley _does _everything on Instagram, and on YouTube, Oakley Does Everything, spelled just the way it sounds. But yeah, so first off, Denise, thank you so much for joining me. I very much appreciate this, and I've enjoyed all our conversations we've had over the last couple of days leading up to this. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor. It was great.
Yeah, awesome. I am very pleased to do it, and I'm looking forward to doing more of these in the future, and maybe having you back on in the future, because these were wonderful conversations. So yeah, absolutely. So cool. All right.
Thank you.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching. I do very much appreciate it. If you like this, give it a like down the button, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Other than that, have a great day. We'll see you on the next video. Bye. Excellent. Cool. All right,
Whew,
Denise.
my computer is about to die.
Wow, it was good timing then, huh?
It was good timing.